Okay, we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
After a terse response to a reporter's question, Governor Ron DeSantis abruptly leaves, only taking 3 questions, all of them about COVID. Here's the one that set him off.
7 kids are in the Joe DiMaggio Hospital, 2 of them in our ICU. Don't you think the mask would help those children?
Do you have any data to suggest that? Do you know if they were wearing masks? You're blaming the kids, saying they weren't wearing masks and so they're in the ICU. With all due respect, I find that deplorable, to blame a victim who ends up being hospitalized.
The governor's news conference comes as Florida hits a new high for COVID patients in the hospital. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says there are more than 11,500 COVID patients in Florida hospitals right now. That's up from Sunday's high of 10,207.
Obviously, media does hysteria. You try to fearmonger. You try to do this stuff. And when they'll talk about hospitalizations, our hospitals are open for business. Like I said, Jackson, the COVID patients are half of what they were last year.
That's true, but the numbers are rising. Jackson reported a COVID high of 485 patients in July of last year, compared to 244 now, up from 200 last week. At Baptist, they had a COVID high last July of 831. Right now, they're at 736. That's up 100% from 2 weeks ago.
We're definitely seeing a massive surge of COVID patients. This is the largest surge that we've seen in Florida.
Dr. Aaron Sorelli is the chief of critical care at Memorial. He says this could be the biggest surge yet. He tells us Memorial had a COVID high in July of 2020 of 673. Now there are 525 COVID patients, up from 300 2 weeks ago, and the patients are getting younger, some in their 20s.
We're seeing some of those patients deteriorate and become critically ill and get to our intensive care unit. Unfortunately, we're seeing some of those young patients die too in our ICUs.
So here's the takeaway, everybody. Florida is the last place you want to be whenever we're talking about any sort of a wave, any sort of a tide, any sort of anything at all. Because, we have, first of all, we have a governor, a mini Trump. His first question, obviously, Ron death sentences. First question about anything that's troubling anybody here in Florida is, what would Trump do, right? The bad news for Ron death sentence is that when you're not Donald Trump and you say things that Donald Trump says, it comes off even stupider and deadlier than when Trump said it. Because at least when Trump said stupid things, you expected him to say stupid things. So here's the situation in Florida, okay? They're predicting that the surge of the Delta variant, which is now 90% of all cases in the United States, never mind Florida. We have 90,000 new cases a day. We're back to like pandemic levels of cases per day. 90,000 cases per day. Okay. 90% of those are the new Delta variant, and they're predicting here in Florida that the first week of September will be peak cases. So when Ron death sentence says back to school, everybody, it sounds like a threat. You know, it sounds like, you better behave, kids, or we'll send you to Ron death sentences, COVID camps. I mean, this is so, the dear leader of Florida is saying, hey, how could you blame the victim? How can you blame the victim, which are the children, for the ridiculous things their parents do? Why, that's just wrong. I don't even understand what his point was there, but if you look at a map of Florida and coronavirus, okay, then Florida is going to look just like a big, giant Christmas stocking hanging off of the United States. I mean, this is just so unbelievable. And we have a governor who not only will not, listen, no one wants lockdowns. We don't need them. What we need is vaccine mandates. It's what we need. We don't need freaking lockdowns. We don't need, school closures. No, we need vaccines and or masks and testing. You choose, you decide. But honestly, that is what Florida needs. And we have a governor who refuses mandatory mask mandates to stop a freaking pandemic when we know that cases among U.S. children and teens in the United States jumped by 84% last week. This virus, like I said, it wants to live. And apparently it wants to live more than many Americans do. And so now it's finding hosts. It's finding children. It's finding younger people who didn't get the vaccine because they thought they wouldn't get it. They thought they were immune. They thought it was only for the old people. They thought only boomers were dying. Whatever they thought, they were wrong. They were wrong. And their parents are strong and wrong. Their parents are ridiculous people who believe every single thing that Fox News and Newsmax and Breitbart and their right-wing lunatic fringy media tells them. They just imbibe it. They just get drunk on it. And the reason why it's being pumped out to them in the first place is for profit. It's for money and profit. People want validation when they're being strong and wrong. People don't have any legitimate information. And if you tell them to look it up, if you tell them that they need to do their own research, as you know, they will say, I don't need to. Because they're very, very happy being strong and wrong and infecting children or having children infect them. So we have a governor, we have many governors. We have Abbott in Texas, we have death sentence in Florida that are literally not going to mandate anything at all. No, they don't want any public health measures taken. None. And in fact, if you go, if you're in a public school district and you want to protect the children and the teachers and the families of those children from a petri dish, which is school, and you want the kids to wear a mask, death sentence is threatening to take your money away to defund your school. Now, I have to tell you, Florida is experiencing all kinds of waves, okay? Routinely, we deal with waves of red tide. Routinely, we deal with high tide and king tide and all kinds of tide. And we're underwater already here in Florida. Already. But yet, if a hurricane comes here, there will be mandatory evacuations. So here's the deal. The reason why there are mandatory hurricane evacuations is so that rescuers don't have to pick among the dead bodies to rescue the live ones. That's why we have mandatory evacuations. So they don't have to dig out all the corpses from of idiots, corpses of idiots who wouldn't evacuate. And we always have those. But now they're saying we should turn over our ICUs to idiots who won't get vaccinated. I'm sorry, I don't get it. Just as a little PS to this little story about living in Florida, Loretta, my mom, is 90. She'll be 91. What's today? The 4th? In 3 days. Saturday, right? Thursday, 5th. Yeah, Saturday. She'll be 91 on Saturday. If she lives. Loretta had to go to the ER today. No, she doesn't have COVID. She's double vaxxed. They tested her to decide, does she have to be isolated from the COVID ward? Or does she get thrown into the COVID ward? She doesn't have COVID. She's bleeding from somewhere internally, and her red blood count is like tanking, okay? I'm hoping it's a raging case of hemorrhoidal tissue is what I'm hoping, but she has to be in the hospital and she's terrified. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.